What you want more than a thin body after 50. Welcome back to part two of my series on curating a life that you love in your 50s, 60s, retirement, and beyond. Let me start with a question. Has weight been a lifelong struggle for you, or only once you hit midlife? So today, let's really discuss what it is that we truly want more than we want that thin body and how to maintain or regain our health and well being. As I mentioned, this is part two where we're going to cover health, diet, weight, functional longevity, and fitness in this series on curating a joyful life after 50. This is when loads of questions and self doubt can kick in for all of us. So make sure you watch part one, which I'll link, Feeling Relevant After 50. Let's make the most of this season of life. So for me, part of my realizations upon turning 50 was acknowledging some definite issues that were going on with me, some chronic pain. I was literally walking in the middle of the day with my husband in Ventura, California, from our townhouse to the movie theater, which was essentially 3 blocks away. And all of a sudden, I said, I am living with chronic pain. And he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, What are you talking about? I said, my hips are sore. My joints are sore. I feel inflamed. And now that I'm really thinking about it, I realize I've been feeling this way for a very long time. I've just been ignoring it because I kind of am that positive mindset person where it's like, oh, don't acknowledge any of that. I call that toxic positivity, another part of the series. But the interesting thing was a few years before that, my mom had been diagnosed with diabetes. And even her doctors were shocked because she didn't really fit the traditional profile of a diabetic. She's pencil thin, always has been, never struggled with weight, a lot of different things. And she was tested multiple times. And so I have to say, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. That was back when I put a whole lot more emphasis on genetics versus lifestyle for a lot of these type things. But I started doing research, and my research took me down the road of reading Grain Brain and Wheat Belly and all those books by doctors, South Beach Diet, so many different books written by doctors who were using nutrition to try to shift the course of things for their patients and then discovered certain things about food and nutrition. And that's when I really started doing body hacking. I gave up all grains for a while. I completely went gluten free, which I still am largely gluten free. I'm not a purist because I don't have celiac, but I really body hacked and I would start eating foods and categorizing and did a whole elimination diet and then would slowly bring things back in. And then I would eat and then I would wait for 20 minutes and I would weigh in. How do I feel? Is my stomach growling? Is there rumbling? Am I feeling bloated? Like, what is going on? Am I achy? Do my joints feel inflamed? Any of that. And it was very interesting because it really started me on a journey of better understanding my own health and my wellness. Now, interestingly, about the same time that that happened, I was literally tossing a bag up on the conveyor belt at the airport, going through security, and I felt a pop. Nothing super significant, but by the time I got through the whole dog and pony show and redressed myself and got all my stuff, I realized that my elbow was sore. And by the time I got to Pennsylvania, which where I was where I was traveling to, I couldn't even squeeze a shampoo bottle. I could hardly move this one arm. So I had to suffer through the trip that I was on. And when I got back, I went to the doctor. It slowly got a little better and all of that. It wasn't so debilitating that I couldn't do anything, but it hurt and it was annoying. Once I got back, I went and saw a specialist, and then he, basically said, "You have tennis elbow. You have," even though I don't play tennis. Really, a lot of it was from the repetition of being on the internet and typing on my computer for so long. And he sent me to a physical therapist, and it was so funny. She asked me a question. It was probably the best thing ever, and that was she asked me about my workout routine, and I told her what I did, and you know, she asked me about weight, like how heavy, all of that. And I told her, and I remember her kind of stopping and looking at me, and she said, are you a body competitor? Are you looking to, model competitively with bodybuilding or any of that?" And I was kind of like, no, never even crossed my mind. And she said, "Why are you lifting such heavy weights then? In your 50s, especially, you don't need to be doing that. And most of us in our 20s, 30s, and 40s don't need to be doing that either. Um, Especially, I was actually in my 40s when this happened, but we don't need to be doing that either at this stage in our life. If you don't have an intention to do that, the biggest thing that you can do is work functionally to build muscle because that helps us age better, helps us move and be functional longer. It helps us with all the different things, but lay off of the super heavy weights unless you're looking to injure yourself. And I really thought about that. And, she told me you don't really need to be lifting any heavier than this, that, and the other thing. And I really took that to heart. And all these years later, I am still really doing that. I do work out with weights and I use just heavy enough to create some good resistance and to build muscle fiber and all of that. But I am no longer in this no pain, no gain mindset. So that's just a thought for you about health and aging and functional wellness. So today, when I really think about it, as I age, I'm focused on healthy eating, I'm focused on functional movement, and I'm focused on lowering the chemical toxins in my environment, which is what this channel is all about. Now, today I'm 61, and it's taken me time to fully adjust because literally I was in my 50s when I started the whole grain free, body hacking, all of that. So I don't want to say that it's been an overnight success journey. It's taken me time to fully adjust, and I'm still a work in progress, as you probably are as well. So I focus on small habits and habit stacking because a confused mind says no. And so often when we decide we're going to clean things up, we want to eliminate sugar, we want to eliminate seed oils, we want to eliminate processed food, we want to cut out alcohol, we want to go to the gym 5 days a week, we're going to walk 4 miles a day, get our 10,000 steps in, whatever it is. And we realize pretty quickly that while we can and we're able to do all of those things, we can't necessarily start with all of those things at once and be successful. So, I always say we don't get our goals, we get our habits. So, what happened for me? Now, I've always been pretty active. I've worked out my entire life. I've eaten well most of my life. I've been very, very hyper vigilant and focused on that because of the way my mother raised me. I give her full credit for that. And then I give myself credit for keeping that going. But a few years ago, I was in a coaching program and we had to select some goals. And one of the things that we had to do was select a personal goal, not a business goal. This was a business coaching program, but we had to pick a personal goal too. And I picked the average of 10,000 steps a day. And so I started with that. Now I was mostly doing that, but I got super intentional about tracking it. Now, when I say a goal of averaging 10,000 steps a day, meaning I know that it's unrealistic for me to think that every single day for the rest of my life, I can hit 10,000 steps. Why? Because sometimes we get sick or we sprain a leg or we travel or different things happen. So my goal was at the end of every week to have averaged 10,000 steps for the day. And over the course of the month and the year, again, to average that 10,000 steps. And once I really got into the groove of doing that, it was funny how my mind began to shift and how habit stacking became very natural. Habit stacking is taking a habit that you already do and stacking a new one, combining it with the new goal that you want to achieve so that the two work together. And then you add another one and then you add another one. So for me, once I did my 10,000 steps, I would come back and I would really drink anywhere from 16 to 32 ounces of water. I live in Arizona. I live in the desert. It's dry here. And so I always wanted to make sure that after I did that, I was hydrating my body in a very good, effective way. So I did that. And then at the same time that I was stacking that, it was like, well, I'm not going to come back from 4 to 6 miles walking in the desert at a good clip and drinking good water and put, trash a bag of chips and guacamole, even though that part is okay, or chips and salsa, which I could easily do because that's my biggest vice is chips and salsa. I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to make sure that when I come home after I hydrate, I'm going to feed my body nutritionally solid food. And as I've like to say, I didn't stretch for 40 years. That was another thing is that I realized I really felt like it was time to incorporate stretching into my daily routine because I wanted my muscles to stay fit, to stay fluid, to stay functional, and stretching is a big part of that. So I would go walk my 10,000 steps. I would come back and drink my water. I would sit down to stretch for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I would feed my body extremely well. And then from there, I stacked on muscle toning. I have been really good at working out, certainly as a cardio bunny and doing walking and a lot of those type things. But very often I would default to that even on a weight workout day. So I became more intentional with my weight workouts, still small weights, just small dumbbells that I have in my house, resistant bands, a lot of that. You can check my YouTube channel here at Lower Toxic Life. I have some of my functional workouts and different things that I do on here just to show you that you don't have to belong to a gym. You don't have to have some big fancy equipment. There's a lot of things that you can do just with water bottles, your own weight resistance, and some simple props like, 3, 5, 8, 10-pound dumbbells and different things like that, resistant bands. So it was interesting how all of that very easily habit stacked one or the other. So I got into the habit again of making sure I was getting in 3 to 5 weight workouts a day. Now, the interesting thing is, this was a totally unanticipated bonus. When I started doing that, I felt like I started being nicer to myself, nicer in my self-talk, nicer in the way I showed up, like dressing up more, even just at home, or, putting on a little makeup because it made me feel good, whatever. I started being nicer to myself. And then, silly as it sounds, I started being nicer to my husband too. Who knew? Just interesting things like that where small habit shifts begin to stretch your mind. Now, I really, truly believe that the nice part of it came from me feeling happier, me feeling more joyful. And when we feel happy ourselves and we take care of ourselves first, it's much easier to express that off to the world, like my husband and other people who I ran into. So you may be thinking, what does this have to do with what you want more than that, thin body? Society tells us that thin is in, and it's the norm that we should strive for. Yet, honestly, more than the number on the scale or that thin body is how we want to feel. We want to feel good. And I mentioned my own journey of just getting out there and walking and then stretching and eating better and working out with weights. And I really believe that the dopamine hit that I was getting from that, the way it affected my brain and made me feel lighter, made me feel happier, created that feel good feeling that then permeated out into the world. And because I felt good, I wanted to continue that. I wanted to continue those workouts, continue eating well, continue all of that. And here's the interesting thing. When we do certain of these things, the weight loss, the thinner body, the more fit body naturally follows. So focus on that just for a moment. Focus on that thought of feeling good. We want the feelings that we believe come with a thin body. And we think that we will feel good when we get that thin body. But honestly, it's in the action steps, the habits that we take that create that feeling of happiness, joy, goodness, whatever it is. And ultimately, through those action steps and that feeling, that's what leads to the thinner, fit body. I prefer to say fit body. Thin is a word that can be triggering, and it means different things to different people. So as we age, a lot of things happen. We reach more of a level of acceptance with ourselves, hopefully, acceptance with the aging process, acceptance with this face that's been with us since we were born, that, yeah, we may see a few extra wrinkles and lines and all of that. But along with aging too comes a level of accountability. And I've talked before about discipline, and that's coming up in this series as well. But accountability, self-accountability is so important because that leads us to feel better about ourselves when we're accountable to ourselves. So I mentioned health And functional longevity is my number one goal at this phase in my life. And by focusing here, believe it or not, again, the weight and the scale begin to take care of themselves. So to age well and maintain health, I focus on diet, nutrition, and movement. And I focus on the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time I'm going to do great. 20% of the time, I may throw caution to the wind and make different choices. Now, I tend to focus more on 90-10 myself. What does 80-20, 90-10 mean? Well, just like that, I like to budget and plan. It's like compound interest, making a deposit and withdrawing. I budget and plan because this creates freedom for me. So I'm a meal and prep planner. I've mentioned before, Sundays are my day for planning everything. I use Sundays. It's my refrigerator clean out day. It's my prepping day. It's my sit down with my calendar, sit down with my YouTube plan. It's the day that I do all that kind of stuff. Sundays just work for me, Sunday afternoon. So when I budget and plan in this way, it creates freedom for me. So on Sundays, I sit down with my calendar. I sit down with my list of things. I go through my refrigerator and I sit down with the calendar first and I budget out what's going on. What events am I attending? Where am I going to be outside of my home for eating? How do I want to eat? What is going on? And so then I create my meal plan of diet nutrition. I plot in what my workout plans are and all of that. And then that gives me total freedom. And by doing that, I can also factor in the day-to-day activities and those special events. And then I can plan for those days when I might throw caution to the wind. Maybe I'm going to happy hour. Maybe I'm going to brunch. Maybe I'm eating outside of my home and I'm not necessarily going to get to choose, some of the processed foods. I can always have a choice, but different things like that. So I plan for my functional longevity and wellness and fitness every day, every week, my daily movement, walking in the desert, using all of the tools that I have. I always remind myself, I want to feel good and I want to look good and I want to age well. So by this budget and planning, I can create all that. And it's kind of interesting. My daughter at 29 is struggling with a little bit of a health issue right now. It's not anything major, but she's in some pain and we're dealing with it and it's going to get fixed. But the bottom line is she said to me, Mom, oh my gosh, I really realized how important my health is to me and feeling good. And I said, yeah, isn't it funny? At any age, most people, I always reflect back on Steve Jobs because, he's got a lot of quotes out there about, all the money in the world, as wealthy and as accomplished as he was, when he died in his 50s of pancreatic cancer, I think it was, no amount of money could save him. And I think a lot about the stresses that he put on himself. Did he take good care of himself? I don't know. I don't know the answers to any of this. But my thought is there might be some things that he, looking back, would have done differently. So there you go. Life tosses us a series of things daily. These are situations, and we get to choose to react or act mindfully and intentionally. I use a process and an acronym called STEBAR, STEBAR. And if you're watching on video, you'll see that on the screen. Thoughts become things. And I've heard that for years by lots of philosophers and self-development gurus, coaches, all of that. And the first time I heard it, I didn't quite get it, but it was interesting to me. And the more we think about it, the more we begin to know that it's true. Everything around us, right? Our phone, that was a thought once, and it became a thing. All of the things around me in my home, it was a thought once in somebody's mind, and it became a thing. So STEBAR stands for situations, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, actions, and results. STEBAR, situations, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, actions, and results. So an example of how this works is part of who do I want to become? Who do I want to show up as in any situation? So for a health situation would be, like I said, life throws stuff at us on a daily basis. So a health situation might go something like this. I'm going to a party. That's a situation. It's a fact, right? It can't be changed. It can be argued in a court of law, and it would be true. I'm going or I'm at this party. That's a situation. The thought that I'm going to have is, what is my food plan going to be? Am I going to choose healthy foods? Am I going to drink alcohol or not drink alcohol? What am I going to do? And along with those thoughts could be a positive or a negative. This party won't be fun unless I get to eat the cake or drink the wine or whatever it is. So that's one thought I could have. Or I could reverse that to a thought that says, I can have fun regardless of what it is that I put in my mouth, regardless of what it is that's on the table. The most beautiful cupcakes, the most beautiful sugar cookies, the most beautiful chips and salsa, the most beautiful margaritas, wine, whatever, don't have anything to do with my ability to have fun. That's all a thought that I'm having. And it's an emotion that I'm feeling. So we've got the situation, the party, the thought, I can't have fun unless I drink or eat these foods that I really don't want to. The E is emotions. We have emotions around all of that, right? Our food choices, happy hour with friends, all of that. And, some of us emotionally eat, some of us emotionally drink, some of us emotionally shop, all of that. So there's emotions that go into all of this. But what I try to do is use my brain and logical thinking to move myself out of that emotion. The emotion can be deprivation or denying myself, or the emotion can be empowerment, proud of myself, validating myself for having a plan and sticking to it, for making a decision. One of my favorite quotes by Michael Jordan is, I made a decision and never thought about it again. So whether he was running down the court and decided to pass the ball to somebody else, even though he could have taken the shot, once he's made the decision, he doesn't look back. Or it could be, I see this guy wide open, but I feel like I have that great 3-point shot. I'm going to go for it. Whether he makes the basket or misses it, he made a decision and just never thought about it again. That's how I try to live my life with my decisions. So back to Stibar and the B, beliefs. This is where it becomes so important. We have an emotion around it, emotion being, I'll be deprived if I don't drink wine with my friends who are all drinking out at happy hour or whatever it is. And the belief is what we have to get clear on. Maybe your beliefs are, well, again, I can't have fun if I don't drink or eat this as well, or my friends won't like me, or I won't be included, I won't be invited. What are your beliefs around food, around alcohol, around your own body and your own abilities and capacities? Are these beliefs serving you? And are you open to shifting those beliefs? And then the A in Stibar is actions, because at the end of it, we've got all of this, but ultimately it's the action that we take that's going to determine everything else. Actions have consequences. So I always ask myself what I want more of. Do I want more of what I'm going to experience right there in the moment, or after that moment has passed? Because the reality of it is we can eat the cupcake, it tastes good, but within just a few seconds, honestly, and we get the dopamine hit, whatever, that moves on. But it's an action. And I always ask myself, how do I want to feel in 30 minutes, in 2 hours, and in 2 days based on the choices that I make, the actions that I take? Because ultimately, the R in all of this are the results. So every situation, as we work through this and ultimately hit the actions, it creates a result. So that's where I also ask myself, what is the result that I want? Am I looking for the feeling of the thinner body, the different number on the scale, the functional fitness, whatever it is? What is the result that I most want? And so that helps us go through those thoughts and those feelings and those emotions and those beliefs and work through all of that and ultimately decide, I'm going to be in these situations where I'm going to have to choose my health and wellness. Which side am I going to choose? Because we've got the situation, the rest of it falls in, and at the end of it, we have the result. So I want to really encourage you to write this down, Stibar, and ask yourself all the time, what is the S? in this situation? What is this situation, right? What is the S here? What is the thought, the T that I'm having? What is the thought? What are the emotions that I'm feeling and where am I feeling them in my body? What are the beliefs that I have around this situation and these thoughts? What action will I ultimately take and what result will I get, even though that result may not show up immediately? Even though that result may not show up immediately. We're always looking for the feeling, and certainly the feeling in the moment. The dopamine hit from the food, the alcohol, the buying something, whatever it is, the scrolling the internet. But it fades quickly. Like I said, often within 30 seconds to certainly 30 minutes. Or do we want that feeling of accomplishment, of discipline, of step by step moving ourselves toward our goals and our future self? We get our habits, not our goals. What would my future self do? That's part 2 on health and well-being as we learn to curate this fabulous life at 50, 60, retirement, and beyond. Next up on the series is discipline, productivity, and routines and systems. Remember, curating a life you love in relationships, career and purpose, health, and more. That's what we're focused on. I'm Jackie Ulmer, and I'm thrilled to be here with you, helping you create that more fulfilling life. Grab my guide over at lowertoxiclife.com.